We are paid, that's all. We are God.
Yo guys! I'm Yuruzi. Part 3 of this is what if Naruto didn't become the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Naruto was born 5 years before the Kyuubi attack and the fox was sealed into his younger sister. His parent don't have the time to teach him, so he looks to others to help him become a great shinobi. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe and check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 10. Exam Interlude. Naruto grinned happily as he walked through the gates of Konoha with the two Chunin guards giving him a friendly wave as he walked past. Itachi and Enko walked beside him while Mikoto was behind them, all happy to be home. The 2 days they had off after the second exam was a welcome put stop for the trio, since walking in the hot desert of Suna for 3 days had taken its toll on them. After the entire 5 days were up, they were reported to the Kazekage office, where they saw that to their surprise only 2 other teams had made it. One was the IWA team while the other was a team from Kyuubi. The Kazekage was a man in his mid-30s with dark plum red hair with tanned skin and brown eyes. Around his eyes he had dark rings around them like he had not had enough sleep, and wore the traditional Kage robes. As he congratulated them, he told them all about the purpose of the Chunin exams and that they were used as a deterrent of war so that it can help build better relationships between the shinobi villages of the world. Afterwards they each had to pick a number in order to figure out who would fight who in the matchups. It was decided that since there were 9 of them, the first 3 matches would be single matches while the 4th would be a triple threat match. Naruto ended up picking number 8, Enko got 1 while Itachi got 4. When they revealed what numbers they all got, Naruto found out the names of everyone in the match while also saw who his opponent would be in the first match. Or in Naruto's case, who his first 2 opponents would be. Enko of Konoha versus Reito of Kyuubi. Deidara of IWA versus Itachi Uchiha of Konoha. Kuratsuchi of IWA versus J of Kyuubi. C of Kyuubi versus Naruto Namikaze of Konoha versus Akatsuchi of IWA. Though Naruto mentally groaned at the thought of starting off with 2 opponents rather than 1, he sucked it in and just got over it. Besides, he figured it would be a great test of his strength, though he noticed that when he looked over at the IWA team, the girl from the first test was staring at him. At first it looked like a confused frown, as if she was trying to figure something out, before she scowled a little and looked away. He decided that girls were just too weird for him to understand. "Okay everyone," Mikoto said, stopping them. "I'm going to go see the Hokage and tell him we're back. The rest of you can head on home and get some well-deserved rest. Though I expect you all to be training for the next portion of the exams," she said as the 3 nodded. "Now, since I am Itachi's mother as well as sensei, I am going to be able to help him every day get prepared for the exams in a month's time. That won't mean I will leave any of you out though. If you want my help, just come to Uchiha clan compound and I will help." "Thanks sensei, but I think I might get a few of the older jonin to help. Kurinai-san said she would help me if I got past the first 2 exams, as did Ibiki. I might ask them for some help," she said as Mikoto nodded before looking at Naruto. "I might ask Gigi and Bachan to help me prepare." Mikoto nodded again but reminded them to come get her if they needed help, since she wanted to help all her students equally, which both Naruto and Enko thanked her for. The group departed and Naruto made his way back to his home. When he arrived home, he found it rather more silent than usual and wondered where everyone was until he tried to sense them. To his surprise, he sensed Kushina and his siblings all outside in the backyard. When he walked out, he stopped right in his spot and felt a bang of hurt in his heart at the scene in front of him. There was Kushina holding a kunai in her hand and was showing Eiji and Mito how to properly hold and throw one at a wooden post. Both were using wooden kunai since they were too young to use the metal ones at the moment. "She's teaching them," he thought as his hands shook a little from the scene, but quickly shook himself out of it when little Mina, who was chasing a butterfly, spotted him and let out a happy gurgle as she began making her way over to him. "Naru," she said as Naruto's eyes softened and bent down to hug her a little and nuzzled her little nose with his own. "Hi Mina-chan, have you been a good girl?" he asked as Mina happily nodded before giggling madly as she began playing with Naruto's blonde hair. Despite him not being around much, those around them could see how much Mina adored her eldest brother and was always following after him when she could, though her little legs could not take her very far. Even though he was distancing himself from his family, There was just a little part of him that could not bear distancing himself from Mina. Plus she had solidified her spot in his heart when her first word was his name, much to everyone's surprise. Naru and I. Naruto heard as the footsteps belonging to a small child were rapidly coming towards him. He looked to the side and braced himself as a blur of blonde with a few red streaks in it jumped into him and hugged him tightly. I missed you so much, Mito said as she gave Naruto a big sloppy kiss on the cheek, making Naruto hesitate a little before plating a small kiss on the top of her head. Eiji quickly followed after his sister and hugged his older brother around the waist while Kushina walked up to him at a slow pace. Welcome home, Naruchan. Well done for getting into the third part of the exam, she commented as she took Mina from Naruto, much to the little girl's dismay. Yeah, thanks Ka-chan. I'm just lucky to have a great sensei and teammates, he said as Kushina nodded a little. Really, Mikoto Baka is a good sensei. Who knew? She said teasingly about her friend, though stopped when she saw Naruto give her a small glare. Don't speak about Mikoto sensei that way, Ka-san. She has done her best and I am forever grateful to be under her tutelage, he said sternly before rubbing his eyes a little and turned around to head back inside. I'm going to bed. I'm a little tired from the trip. Kushina didn't reply but looked at Naruto head back inside with a slightly struck look on her face. Naruchan has never glared at me before, she thought before shaking her head. He's just tired and needs his rest. She turned around to see her children with slightly sad looks on their faces as Naruto walked away before the twins went back to their wooden kunai practice and Mina went back to chasing butterflies. If she had paid more attention she would have noticed Naruto use San instead of Chan like he normally did. Later on that evening Naruto lay in his bed as he looked up at the ceiling as the light from the moon gently shone through the curtains of his window. He had stayed in his room to rest for most of the day and only really went down when his father came home and they had dinner round the table. Most of the dinner talk was taken up by Mito and Eiji, who were talking about their day with Kushina while Mina was either gazing into space or was laughing at the funny faces Naruto was making at her. When it got to Naruto and the Chunin exams, he only gave them short answers and didn't get into the details since he was not really in the mood for talking. Both Minato and Kushina frowned a little at that and wanted him to tell them more, however he just stayed mostly quiet, ignoring them when they asked for more details. Afterwards he took his dish and cutlery and had them washed before he went back to his room. He was going to visit Hiruzen tomorrow to get some training in for the Chunin exam's third round and hoped Tsunade and Shizen would join them as well since he knew there was talk about showing him the Shozen Jutsu which he was looking forward to. He looked at his alarm clock to see it was 11 p.m. He was about to shut his eyes before he heard his door open up slightly and could hear little steps coming towards the bed. He sat up and saw little Mina walking towards him wearing her little purple pajamas while holding her teddy in her arms. Mina-chan, what are you doing in here? It's late and you should be in bed, he said as he saw her rub her eyes with her tiny hands before she looked at him and put her arms out. Stay with Naru, she said, making him hesitate a little before he let it be. He smiled and went forward and picked his baby sister up. He lifted the covers and put himself and Mina under them with Naruto leaning on his side while Mina was snuggled up next to him. Mina snuggled into her big brother's chest as Naruto wrapped his arms around her to keep her warm and safe. Love you, Naru, she said, yawning before she immediately fell asleep. Naruto looked down at his baby sister and gently kissed her forehead. Good night, Mina-chan. Sweet dreams. Just when Naruto fell asleep, Kushina passed his door to see that it was slightly open. When she took a peek in, her face softened and had a warm smile appear on her face when she saw her youngest cuddled up with her oldest. She tiptoed back before gently and silently closing the bedroom door and made her way to hers and Minato's room. Next day. I am impressed, Naruto. You and your team sound like you had quite the experience for your Chunin exams. And you finished the second round in 3 of the 5 days is an impressive feat, Hiruzen said as Naruto finished recounting the first 2 rounds to Hiruzen, Tsunade and Shizen, who had welcomed him back and told him well done for his efforts in the Chunin exams and for making the third round. Now what do you know about your 2 opponents? Well, that's just it. I don't really know anything about them. I can only make guesses by their size and personalities. We did not have any chance to see any of each other's abilities. Tsunade pondered as she thought about it. You said one was called Akatsuchi who was from IWA and the other was called C who was from Kyuubi. How big would you say they were? Very big, bigger than other kids my age, he said, making them all nod. In that case I can bet they will favor their physical strength and will end up lacking in speed. We can work on your speed and make you faster than ever. Plus I will be drilling you into taijutsu every day until you can stand anymore. She said, grinning, making Naruto grin back. Plus I bet this boy from IWA will use earth jutsus since they are very common for shinobi from IWA, and the boy C from Kyuubi will favor lightning jutsus for the same reason. Shizen added, with Tsunade and Hiruzen nodding at the logic behind it. So we work on his speed along with teaching him jutsu to counter earth and lightning. Wind we can do. But Naruto does not have a lightning affinity. Then we focus on water and earth techniques. Counter earth with earth and then use water against lightning. The two are both each other's enemy. Hiruzen said. Plus I can work on my kenjutsu and fuinjutsu when I am on my own. They all nodded and made a quickly plan of what the training schedule for him would be like for the next month until it was time for him to leave for Suna again. Shizen would train him in the mornings until 1. Then an hour break for lunch until Tsunade would get him until 2 to 6. Then in the evening he could focus on his kenjutsu and fuinjutsu. Where are you up to in your fuinjutsu? Hiruzen asked. Naruto grinned and got out a small book from the storage seal on his right wrist. I'm in the middle of level 4 at the moment, GG. I maybe have a couple of months, maybe a year at most until I am ready for level 5. He said. Hiruzen whistled, showing he was impressed. He would be surprised if this time in the next decade Naruto was already at his parents' level of fuinjutsu or maybe even higher above them. Now that we covered, we can let Naruto know of the new techniques we will be teaching him. Shizen said as Hiruzen and Tsunade nodded in agreement. Really? What techniques? He asked, a little excited at the thought of learning something new. Shizen put her hand out and Naruto watched as a green aura wrapped around it, making Naruto realize what it was. The Shozen Jutsu. He said as she nodded. It's time we taught you how to heal yourself and others around you if the time ever comes. Since you have great control for your age, no doubt you will be able to pick it up quickly, though we may have a way of cutting that time down greatly. Shizen added as she motioned to Hiruzen, who then made the ram seal and created a clone next to him. The clone technique? But I already know the clone technique. Ah, but this is not like the illusion clones. Hiruzen said as he tapped on the clone's head, showing it was solid. These clones are very real but can be dispersed if we will it to, or they are hit hard enough. Plus any memory or action they have or do will go straight back to the original. Normally we would not show this to you since it is a B rank jutsu that requires a lot of chakra. However, since your chakra levels are already nearly the same size as Shizen and you have great chakra control, it means we can teach it to you early. So any of the jutsu I try and learn will be shortened because the clones will also learn it as well. I'm not surprised you figured it out. You are a smart cookie, Naruto-chan. Tsunade said. But yes, that is what we are aiming for. We will be able to teach you a lot in just a month if you make a few clones to learn it at the same time. So for new techniques, Shizen Ne-chan will teach me the Shozen Jutsu and Gigi will teach me the Kagebushin no Jutsu. Then what are you going to teach me, Ba-chan? When he asked, Tsunade grinned while Shizen and Hiruzen looked a little panicked. No doubt they both knew what she was going to teach him. Are you sure you want to teach him that jutsu, Tsunade? He might not be ready for it just yet. Hiruzen asked almost in a pleading tone, but Tsunade waved it off. I have no doubt in my mind he will be able to learn it and master it to a degree in time for the Chunin exams. Besides, I have never taught this jutsu to anyone before and I think teaching it to Naruto-chan would be the right thing to do. Naruto looked a little confused since he was unsure of which technique Tsunade was talking about, since she had a few techniques which she had never taught anyone, not even Shizen. Motioning him to follow her, Naruto was led outside by Tsunade, who had Hiruzen and Shizen following behind them, both looking a little pale. She stood in front of one of the Sarutobi clan training fields that the Sarutobi clan had, but Naruto swore he heard Hiruzen mumbling under his breath. This, Naruto-chan, is what I will be teaching you. When people see you do this, they won't want to go anywhere near you. Grinning to herself, she raised her right fist high in the air for the three to see. Her right hand glowed bright blue and Naruto could see it getting denser before it suddenly disappeared around her hand. Tsunade cried out as she brought her right fist down onto the ground and punched it with all her might. As soon as her fist hit, the entire training field cracked and began burst in a big explosion, making a big cloud of smoke and gravelly smoke to go through the area. Naruto, Hiruzen and Shizen managed to use their chakra to keep them in one place since some damage had been done even from behind Tsunade while the entire training field had been completely leveled. Whoa! Naruto said to himself. He had seen Tsunade use her super strength abilities many times, even in their spars together, but every time it made him look on in both amazement and a little bit of fear. Why, you're going to teach me that? Naruto said in amazement as Tsunade turned around to face him and grinned at him. But remember Naruto, this technique of mine is very dangerous and therefore you must always be very careful, since one false move and all that chakra you build up in your hand could be released too early or too late and will result in your hand being blown to pieces. Naruto gulped. Also, you must not teach another person this technique without my approval. The last thing I want are too many shinobi knowing my trademark technique and it somehow being used against us. Understand? She asked and Naruto nodded his head. Naruto grinned happily. The three older shinobi smiled at his eagerness, but before they could push forward and begin the training, an Umbu appeared. Tsunade-sama, Sandem-sama, Shizen-san, the Hokage has requested your presence in his office. He says it is of the utmost importance. The trio all looked in surprise and curiosity to what Minato was asking of them. We will be right there. Hiruzen answered as the Umbu disappeared. Well, Naruto-chan, you can stay here if you like and practice, or you can head on home and we can begin tomorrow. We best go see what your father needs. Hiruzen told the young blonde. Okay Gigi, I'll see you all later. Naruto said as Shizen and Tsunade painted a kiss on his forehead each before they trio shined away. Naruto stood there and watched them go before a thought crossed his mind and took this as a good chance to do something without his parents or anyone else knowing about. I think I'll head home. I have something I want to learn and surprise everyone with at the Chunin exams. He thought to himself before grinning and running back home. Hokage office. Tsunade, Hiruzen and Shizen arrived in the Hokage office and were surprised to see Minato, Kushina, Jiraiya and Kakashi all standing there talking amongst them before seeing the new group arrive. Ah, I am glad you are all here. Jiraiya here has important information for us which the three of you need to hear. Minato said, though they could see he had a happy smile plastered on his face. Tsunade, Hiruzen and Shizen looked towards Jiraiya, who looked a bit more serious than he normally did as Kakashi and Kushina stood off to the side. The prophecy from the toads have changed and I now know for certain whom it speaks of. The prophecy speaks of two children born from two powerful parents that reside in a leaf will stage a great revolution in our world and will lead us to an era of peace. The three shot their eyebrows up again as Hiruzen spoke up. I have an idea of who you mean, but I would like you to say it anyway. Mito and Eiji, I know in my gut they are the children of prophecy. I am sure of it, as are Minato, Kushina and Kakashi. Okay, well that's all fine and dandy. Tsunade interrupted as she stood with her hands on her hips. But why gather us all like this? Surely this is something you could have told us at a separate time. Since Eiji and Mito are the children of prophecy, we need them to be ready when the time is right. We know it early, but we think it is best to start their training early, to make them as strong as possible for when the times comes. Kushina said, which shocked the three. Kushina-sama, don't you think 5 is a little young? I mean, yes, the three of us began training Naruto when he was 5, but that was because of the Kyuubi attack. The twins won't have an incident like that during their youth, I imagine. As true as that may be, Shizen-san, the twins are special as we have just found out, while Naruto is not. We know what we're doing. Jiraiya said as Kakashi nodded. Tsunade, Shizen and even Hiruzen were a little taken back by the comment from Jiraiya, but it disappeared since they knew just how wrong Jiraiya was. Kushina and Minato too were a little set back by the comment, however did not act on it. Anyway, with this information we will all be needed to begin training them as soon as possible. We want to create a charter for when we train them and what we will each teach them. Minato said. We are thinking I will teach them taijutsu, Kushina can focus on fuinjutsu and possibly kenjutsu, Kakashi will take stealth and trap making. Tsuanda and Shizen, if you take medical ninjutsu then we can. No. Kakashi, Jiraiya, Kushina and Minato's head turned sharply to Tsunade, who gave them all a glare. Hiruzen and Shizen stood behind her and just had a motionless look on their faces. No? What do you mean no, Tsunade-sama? Kakashi asked. What do you think it means, Hataki? I am not training them. I have already promised to help Naruto with his training for the Chunin exams. We already have a schedule for him and the three of us have promised him. Hein. Jiraiya said, walking forward and touching her shoulder. The twins are more important. We can easily find someone to take over Naruto's training for the month. I'm sure the Gaki will understand. The twins need to come first in this. He said before he felt great pain in his hand as Tsunade grabbed it tightly, causing a few bones to crack a little. And when will you understand that I won't turn my back on him in his time of need? Unlike some. She said as she turned around and began walking out of the office. What do you mean by that? No one has turned their backs on Naruto-chan. Kushina said, frowning a little at the statement, and felt more confusion when she heard Tsunade scoff. Tsunade left the room while Hiruzen and Shizen said their goodbyes before leaving along with the Senju woman. You alright, sensei? Minato asked as Jiraiya held his hand. I am surprised Tsunade said no. I thought she would have jumped at the chance to teach the twins. Don't worry about her. I will talk to her and I will show her that the twins need her more than Naruto does. We can have someone train the kid, right? He asked as Minato and Kushina nodded. They need to see that Mito and Eiji are going to need our help a lot more than Naruto ever will. It's for the greater good, right? Kushina said. However, please don't say that Naruto is not special, Jiraiya. He is special and I don't want people saying he is not. All children are special. She glared at him a little while Minato sat back and breathed in deeply while Kakashi shrugged his shoulders and hoped out the window while pulling out his Ika book. I know. Jiraiya said, quickly dismissing it, but not wanting to get on the redhead's bad side. Well, I will see you all tomorrow. I however have some research to do, he said perversely before shining away. That man will never change, Kushina said while Minato smiled a little at his sensei's antics. With Naruto. Good thing Toussaint and Ka-san are not here, otherwise they would probably not approve of me trying to learn what I need for that technique. Naruto said to himself as he quickly opened the door to his father's office and snuck in. Walking in, he quickly walked towards his father's desk and then bent down on his knees. From underneath the desk he hit it 3 times before a small cabinet suddenly opened up, revealing a couple of scrolls. He had found this secret cabinet by accident when he tripped over his own feet when he was 7 and noticed the small hidden cabinet. After finding out how to get in, which was easier than he imagined, and was surprised his father didn't put some kind of locking seal around it. Bit of a rookie mistake, but Toussaint probably never imagined someone would actually have the stones to do this. Naruto thought, smirking slightly. I don't think that Toussaint would be too happy with this, but he does owe me at least this much. As he looked through the scrolls he quickly saw the opens he was looking for. On the side of the scroll it had the rank of the jutsu Naruto wanted to learn. It was an A-rank jutsu that most would have said Naruto was nowhere near ready for, but he thought otherwise. From his right wrist he quickly poofed out a scroll and brush with a little bit of ink and quickly opened the scroll up and began copying the contents that was written down on them. Thanks to learning Fuinjutsu, his speed in writing was extremely fast and he quickly had all the contents of the scroll written down in less than a minute. His eyes traveled across the copy scroll he had just made, checking everything he needed was written on it. When he saw it he quickly sealed his equipment away along with the new scroll while placing his father jutsu scroll back in the cabinet and locked it up. He quickly got to his feet and left the office. When he closed the door behind him he had a small smirk on his face. It never ceased to amaze him that he was able to take jutsu from his mother and father's library anytime he wanted and never get caught. Heck, he even managed to do it one night when they were in the house. Then again, Shizen Nei-san did say I have pretty impressive stealth skills. I could probably paint the Hokage monument in broad daylight if I wanted to and still get away with it. He knew his father and mother would probably be a bit displeased when they found out, but the reaction on their and everyone else's faces when he used said jutsu was going to be well worth it. After shaking his head he left for him room when he quickly began study from his Fuinjutsu level 4 book. Next day with Anko. Anko panted a little as she ducked a swipe from Ibiki Marino, a man in his early 20s and who worked for the TNI division in Konoha. Since she arrived in Konoha, Ibiki had taken an interest in her and shown her a thing or two from time to time. That and Anko loved hanging around the TNI building. The torturing screams from there were music to her ears. To the side of the small field was Kurina Yuhi, who was watching Anko fight Ibiki since the two had agreed to help ready Anko for the exams. I won't let Naruto and Itachi gap getting any bigger from me. I need to catch up. Especially if I want to kill him one day, she thought before she charged and engaged Ibiki in taijutsu while using her snakes to try and bite the hell out of him. With Itachi. Itachi sat meditating in the middle of one of the Uchiha training fields with his eyes wide open, showing his matured Sharingan which was scanning around the area. After a few moments a barrage of shuriken shot towards him. However, Itachi quickly got up and with great speed threw his own shuriken which countered every single one of them. When he stood up his mother appeared behind him and went towards him with her tanto, however instead of moving he let the blade pass through him. When it did, instead any blood being spilled, Itachi merely faded away like a mirage. Very good, Itachi-kun. Mikoto said as she looked to her right to see Itachi standing there nodding at his mother before her own Sharingan flared as mother and son lunged towards each other. With Naruto. Naruto breathed easy as he held the sheathed shusui in his left hand as he crouched on his spot. His eyes were closed and he was focusing on everything that was around him. He could hear and sense everything and everyone around him, which included Shizun and Hiruzen who were watching from the side. As he finished taking a breath, his eyes shot open and with great speed he sped forward before stopping a few meters as a small boulder that was in the way. His blade was now out of its sheath, but Naruto was slowly sheathing it back in. Just before he put the whole way in, Naruto muttered under his breath before the clink of the blade being fully sheathed ran out along with a loud crack to be heard. Everyone looked to see the boulder was now cut clean in two. Naruto grinned while Shizun looked towards Hiruzen who had an equal grin on his face. Chapter 11. Chunin Finals Part 1. The crowd roared and cheered as Naruto stood in the center on the Suna Chunin exam stadium. To his left stood Itachi and Enko while on his right were the IWA and Kyuubi teams. That's a lot of people, Naruto muttered as Enko and Itachi had to nod in agreement. Easily all of the Suna shinobi and most of its civilians were here in the stadium along with a lot of foreign shinobi. Go Naruto, Naruto heard as he looked up in the stadium and went a little bit red before smiling as he saw Tsunade, Shizun and Hiruzen in the crowd. Tsunade had even made a giant flag that said Team Naruto and was waving it around. Instead of being embarrassed, he just laughed and gave Tsunade a thumbs up as grinned at him. Just beside them was Mikoto and a few members of the Uchiha clan, which included Fugaku, Sasuke, Ria and Itachi's family member Shisui, who Naruto had met a couple of times before. Shisui was a lot like Itachi as well as did not have that Uchiha stick in the ass. Little Ria was sitting on her mother's lap as she looked around happily at the sight of a new place while waving her little hands at her oldest brother, while Sasuke too had a big smile and cheered Itachi on. Over on the other side of the stadium was the Kyuubi and IWA lot that were mostly quiet and stoic. Though Naruto noticed that a lot of the IWA shinobi were staring at him either in curiosity or with a glare on their face. The glares they have made him, they would want to jump from their seats and attack him. Then up in the Hokage box was his father along with the Kazekage, Reikage and surprisingly the Tsuchikage. His father was busy conversing with the Kazekage and had Kakashi standing beside him as a bodyguard. The Kazekage had a tanned man with half his face covered by white cover. Beside the Tsuchikage, who was an old man that was very short, old man with a triangular beard and a mustache that has angular corners, a big red nose and thick eyebrows. The top of his head is completely bald, although he has long white hair on the lower half of his head which is styled in a traditional Chanmage haircut. Over his shinobi coat he wore a mostly green and red coat. Beside him was a large man wearing the traditional red IWA uniform but had no sleeve on his right arm, showing his larger arms. Then beside the Reikage was the same Jonin who accompanied him to Konoha just over a year ago. As Naruto waited for the proctor to begin the third exam, he knew that his own family was missing from the stands. Before they had left for Suna, Minato and Jiraiya had decided it would be best to keep the twins and Mina in Konoha since they did not want to risk any assassination attempts. Kushina had readily agreed, which made Naruto angry. He wondered if his parents actually remembered about him at all. They had not shown any concern when he left for Suna over a month ago, and yet they were threatening over the twins. Instead of coming to Suna, they would instead watch from the Chunin Stadium in the Leaf, where they would be playing the Chunin exams on the big screen for those that had not gone to Suna to be able to watch it. His eyesight then turned towards the shinobi he and his team would have to go against, but noticed that the IWA Kunoichi was glaring at him. Kuratsuchi, whose name he remembered outfit was the same as before, but her eyes were brimming with confidence. I bet she has gotten a lot stronger since her grandfather is the Tsuchikage after all, he thought as he looked back up at the Kage box to see Inoki looking down at his granddaughter with a prideful smile before he turned to Naruto, gaze before narrowing a little and scoffed a little. Over in the stands, Tsuanda, who was keeping close eye on Naruto, saw where his gaze was going. San noticed Inoki looking at him. She let a growl build up in her throat, promising pain to Inoki if he tried anything during the exams. Next to him, Enko let her eyebrows shoot up a little. You okay, Naruto? Enko asked as she tapped her friends on the elbow since she saw his frown on his face. Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking that all, he said, looking away from the stands and just focusing on the ground in front of him. Always dangerous, she said, snickering a little while Naruto knocked her a little with his hip, making her almost trip. He got a glare in return. Konoha. Kushina sat in the Kage box with many of clan heads as they waited and watched the Chunin exams, wondering how well Mikoto's team was going to do since she had bragged that her team was defiantly going to make Chunin first time around. It earned a lot of scoffs thinking it was ridiculous but were curious nonetheless. Kushina sat with Mina on her lap who was giggling happily as she saw her brother on the big screen. If it was not for the eyes, he would be a carbon copy of Minato, Inora said as her daughter Ino sat by her feet, happily playing with Mito and the other clan children. Suna. From the center of the arena a small smoke cloud appeared and got quickly swept away. Pakura arrived and stood in the arena drawing attention to herself as her being there signaled the matches were about to begin. Good luck guys, Naruto whispered. You too, both Itachi and Enko said to him before they paid close attention as the Kazekage stood up from his seat and began to speak as his voice projected through the arena. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the third part of the Chunin exams. I welcome everyone who is from the village of Konoha, Iwagakure and Kyumogakure and hope you are enjoying your stay here in Suna. Watch as these 8 young genin will show the world why they are ready to advance into becoming Chunin of their village. Pakura, I leave the rest to you. Pakura nodded towards her Kazekage before looking at the 8 genin. If any of you want to drop out now, then now is the time to do so, she said as everyone watched as no one moved. In that case, would everyone except for Anko Mitsurashi of Konoha and Reito Kurashini of Kumo please leave the field and go to the competitors box, she said. Kick some ass Anko, Naruto said as Anko grinned at him knowing that kicking ass was exactly what she had in mind. Naruto and Itachi left the arena and stood next to one another as they watched their friend and teammate. So how do you think she will do? Itachi asked watching as Anko took up her position as did the Kumo shinobi. Naruto grinned at the question. Anko is going to win, no questions asked. She has been working her butt of this last week so there is no way she would lose to this guy. On the field. You ready to lose, Leaf Girl? Reito asked as he cracked his neck and shuffled his arms around. Anko stood calmly and firmly as she stared at her opponent before she licked her lips a little showing her anticipation for the match. Pakura stood up to the side as she looked between the two. She raised an arm which made the stadium fall quiet before she swung down. Hajime. As soon as the word was said, Reito shot forward and pulled a sword from its sheath on his back and swung down at her. Anko saw it and jumped backwards a few meters. Reito did not stop since he quickly jumped forwards and began trying to strike Anko with his blade. He was swinging in a mad frenzy but Anko though was easily dodging the strikes. Raitun, Inazuma Zeppin, he said as he threw his hand forward to try and grab Anko's shoulder and sent currents of lightning going through her body. Anko however kawarimi'd away and reappeared 10 meters behind him leaving a log in her previous spot. As she stood there she bent down a little, traced her thumb over the ground, something Reito did not take much notice of while the shinobi in the stands did. Interesting, Hiruzen thought as he watched Anko. Reito growled loudly and breathed hard as Anko danced on the spot a little. Reito once again went forward a bit, this time tried to hit her with his taijutsu, which by the way he was throwing punches towards her though it looked similar to an academy-style taijutsu. His punches and kicks were a little sloppy and Anko easily maneuvered out of the way before landing once again 10 meters away from him. Damn it, stop dodging and running away you coward, he said to Anko before he felt something slice his cheek all of a sudden and felt a warm trickle going down it. A cut formed on his cheek and behind him was a kunai. Anko blurred from her spot in front of him and appeared behind him and pinned his arms behind his body. Who is the coward, you snot, she said as she licked a small trail of blood from his cheek which freaked Reito out. She pushed him in front of her and with great speed and precision threw senbons toward Reito. Senbons? He laughed as he pulled them out. How pathetic, he said, throwing them away before noticing his arms suddenly went limp. A look of horror and surprise appeared on his face when his other arms suddenly went as well. My arms? What did you do? Those pathetic senbons, as you called them, were laced in poison, she said, making Reito's eyes go wide like saucers. Don't worry, it's not harmful, but it will make your body go numb and limp for a few hours. Don't worry though, you should be fine by the end of the day. However, she said as a wicked grin appeared on her face. It means you are now all ripe for the taking. She makes a hand sign and out of the ground a large snake bigger than Reito comes out of the earth and wraps around the numbed boy who now looks ready to drop to the ground in fear. Now you can either surrender or I could have my friend have you as a snack. He has not been fed in a few days so he is mighty hungry, she said, patting its head before the snake hissed loudly at Reito. Everyone watched as the snake opened its jaws and elongated its fangs towards him. Just as the snake's mouth was about to devour him whole, Reito called out, I give up. I surrender. Darn, that takes the fun out of things, Anko said before shrugging as she called off the giant snake and watched as Reito dropped to the ground like a sack of potatoes. Pakura, who was standing a little off to the side, smirked a little before holding up her hand. The winner of the match is Anko Mitsurashi of Konoha. When she spoke, the audience clapped while those from Konoha cheered. Pakura optioned for a stretcher to come onto the field and they quickly took Rado away. That girl is pretty good. She might have a bright future in the Leaf, Hiruzen said. Though I wonder where she learnt to use poisons. Both Hiruzen and Swanda glanced over towards Shizune, who shuffled a little in her seat before returning to the field. Up in the Hokage box, the Raikage grumbled a little while Inoki looked at the girl curiously. How is it that she has the snake contract? He asked. I'm not at liberty to say that, Minato said firmly as Kakashi eyed the older Kage while the guard of Inoki's looked in Kakashi's. I would not bother asking Tsuchikage. When it comes to sharing information, don't expect to get anything back from him or that village of his. Minato glared a little from his seat while the two Kages huffed. Not surprising. The boy always was full of himself, Inoki muttered while Kakashi glared at him before Inoki glared at Kakashi. Boy, if you don't stop glaring at me you will be joining your father in the afterlife, he threatened as Minato put his hand on Kakashi's shoulder as things went quiet in the Hokage box. Good job out there, Anko. You showed him who was boss, Naruto said as Anko shrugged. I did what I could, she said before looking at Itachi. You better win your match because I will be waiting for you in the next round, she said as Itachi nodded and began walking onto the field. Itachi arrived on the field as he looked across from his opponent, Deidara of IWA. The blonde IWA shinobi was grinning as his hands were very close to a pouch on his side. Are Uchiha-san? Are you ready to behold my art? It is quite a bang, he said as Itachi furrowed his brow. Art? Art is fast, something that happens in an instance. It's so quick most don't even see it. Except for me, that is. It's art, it's beautiful. It would be great to defeat you, Uchiha-san. My sensei that Tsuchikage will be pleased with me knowing I defeated someone of the famed Uchiha clan. After speaking, many looked at him in surprise at that he was trained by Inoki. Some of the Uchiha members including Mikoto looked a little worried while Fugaku and the others showed no emotion. In the Kage box the other Kages looked at Inoki in surprise since Inoki had never shown any interest in taking on a student before other than those in his family. So they wondered what was so special about this one boy. A student of the Tsuchikage. He is going to be good then, Naruto said as Anko nodded in agreement. Pakura's voice broke everyone out of their thoughts as she raised her hands. She looked towards the two who both nodded at her. She nodded back before calling out Hajime. Immediately both Itachi and Deidara jumped back from each other to the other side of the field. Naruto fingered his shurikens in his pocket while keeping his eyes plastered on Deidara while Deidara and put his hand in the pouch and took out a lump of white clay. Everyone looked in curiosity at what H was going to as well as Itachi before everyone had a slightly grossed out look when they saw a hand appear on his hand with a tongue sticking out of it. It ate the clay and began to munching on it. I think I lost my appetite, Ka-chan, Sasuke said looking a little green as did Ria who was pouting and waving her arms at the action, obviously not impressed. Deidara grinned before he noticed that Itachi's eyes and become Sharingan and were spinning around. He looked away and tried to avoid eye contact since he had been told that an Uchiha could easily put a genjutsu on someone by just looking at them. Your eye tricks won't work on me, he said as Itachi then threw a flurry of shurikens. Doton, Dorihiki, Deidara called as he made the hand signs while his right hand was still munching on the clay. The wall went you and stopped the shurikens but Deidara was surprised to see Itachi quickly appear on top of the wall. Katon, Gokakyu no Jutsu. A torrent of fire went towards Deidara and poured over Deidara much to everyone's surprise and a few people's cries. Itachi looked a little surprised but when the fire disappeared he and everyone went all-tidal wide-eyed when they saw Deidara begin to melt away. A clone, Itachi thought before he suddenly heard scurrying come from beneath him. He looked down to see little spiders made of clay walk towards him. It seemed you fell into the trap, Deidara said appearing a distance behind him and made a hand sign. Katsu. When he spoke the spiders lit up and to everyone's surprise exploded. Itachi, Anko shouted out having seen her friend in the center of the explosion though Naruto stayed looking calm. Though she and many other were relieved when they saw a log was now where Itachi is standing. Not bad, Itachi said now appearing behind Deidara with a kunai to the back of his neck. When did you make the clone? I see the Uchiha live up to their name. I would be disappointed if you did not. And to answer the question when the earth wall went up. But you Uchihas really should pay more attention behind you, Deidara called as Itachi looked behind to find more clay spiders appearing and jumping towards him and trying to latch onto him. Itachi jumped up high towards the top of the wall. Katon, Ryuka no Jutsu. A giant head of a dragon flew towards the clay, burning and melting most of them. When the spiders disappeared, Itachi was surprised to see owls made of clay now flying towards him. Frowning, he made a new set of hand signs. Raitun, Reiku Senbon no Jutsu, a range of lightning-made senbons formed in front of him and he threw them towards the clay-made owls. Since when does Itachi know lightning jutsu? Anko asked, since she was unaware he even knew Nei light jutsu since he was mostly fire-based like she was. Must have picked it up during his training, Naruto answered. The lightning-made senbons hit the owls and they all went tumbling down. As Itachi looked toward Deidara, he saw a grin was plastered on his face. You're in range, Deidara said as from the corner of Itachi's eye he noticed a small clay bird appear in front of him. His eyes went wide and jumped back as much as he could but saw that he was just too close. Deidara looked victorious as the tongues in his hands swayed around in every direction. Now you know that art is an explosion. The clay bird exploded right by Itachi, caused a small shock wave to hit the arena and throw a couple off their feet. The walls that it was close to now had a big indent and cracks in it. Coming out of the smoke cloud, Itachi jumped out, all limbs still intact but had burn on his right hand and leg along with some blood going down the right side of his face. However, as soon as he landed, a clay-made centipede came out of the ground and wrapped around. It held on tightly as Deidara appeared in front of him with a grin on his face as he held up the hand sign for the explosions. Any last words, Uchiha? I would hate to make a mess, Deidara said. He waited for Itachi to say something but instead Itachi said no words but instead had a small grin on his face. The grin alone made rage boil inside Deidara, wondering what Itachi had to grin about. He was about to ask what he was grinning at but just as he got close to Itachi, the Uchiha suddenly disappeared in a flock of crows. I would not make that hand sign if I were you, Itachi's voice said before Deidara suddenly felt something clamp around him. He looked down and was shocked to see the clay centipede wrapped around him instead of Itachi. What? I don't understand, he said as Itachi appeared in front of him with no injuries on him anymore and he noticed Itachi's Sharingan eyes were spinning. A genjutsu? You have had me in a genjutsu. When did you put it on? The moment you first looked in my eyes at the beginning of the match, he said as everything around the suddenly broke away like glass, revealing the real audience who looked a little surprised. There was a grinning Uchiha clan as well as a smiling Naruto and Anko all looking at him. Pakura walked over to the two boys, impressed at the control Itachi had throughout the entire match, and called the match. The winner is Itachi Uchiha from Konoha. Many cheered as the Uchiha as Deidara slowly made his way of the field with his head low. Never had he felt this humiliated before. He saw that Tsuchikage shaking his head while his IWA partners gave him some sympathy, though he looked back at Itachi with hate-filled eyes, silently swearing he would make Itachi pay. That my boy. That my Itachi-kun, Mikoto called out as Sasuke and Ria joined in while Fugaku tried to scold his wife for not acting proper but she just waved him off. Itachi left the field a little red-faced since his mother was shouting how well her little boy did. He saw the grins on his teammate's face. Very nice, Mr. Uchiha, winning with a genjutsu. How very Uchiha of you, Anko said, patting his shoulder. Though you better now, it will take more than a genjutsu to make me down, she said. I would expect nothing less, Anko, he called back as the next match was announced and they watched as the other Kyuubi shinobi and the IWA girl made their way onto the field. So who do you think will win this one? Anko asked as they all scanned the two opponents. The girl, Naruto said, getting looks from his two teammates. She is strong, I know that much. She is the granddaughter of the Tsuchikage, therefore no doubt he will have a hand in her training. Though unlike Deidara, I don't think a genjutsu will be enough to take her out. He did not know how right he was. The match did not last very long. The Kyuubi had changed like some academy student while Kuratsuchi had remained calm. She quickly batted him away with her taijutsu, which was recognized as the rock style the IWA shinobi were known for using. She then used a couple of C and B ranked earth jutsus which quickly squashed any chance of the Kyuubi winning. She trapped him in earth before knocking his lights out with swift and powerful punches. Once it was over, Kuratsuchi was standing there with a victorious smile on her face, hardly scratched or worn out, while the Kyuubi was out cold and bloodied on the ground. Pakura quickly called it. Kuratsuchi walked proudly back to the finalists' box. She looked towards Naruto briefly and gave him a look as if saying to him, try and beat that. Oh, it's on, Naruto thought, smirking before he heard his name being called along with the two others he would have to battle. As he, Akatsuchi and C walked onto the field, they all got a round of cheer formed their respective villages. Tsunade, Shizun and Hiruzen cheered, Tsunade being the loudest, telling Naruto to kick some serious ass. While back in Konoha, Mito, Eiji and Mina all cheered and clapped when they saw their big brother on the big screen. Kushina clapped lightly, smiling as she watched Naruto's match. In the Kage box, all Kage and bodyguards looked down curiously at the Naruto, no doubt wanting to see if he was anything like his parents and to see just how powerful he was. They had seen firsthand how his two teammates had fought. Now though it was time for Naruto to shine. The three stood in a triangle-like formation and Pakura was just outside the triangle. As he stood there, he saw Akatsuchi and C looked at each other and nodded before turning towards him. He along with many others saw it and inwardly cursed. Though Naruto had stayed perfectly calm and now prepared himself. His hand went behind his back and sneakily made a hand sign. Only Hiruzen and Tsunade saw it and inwardly smirked. "Hajime," Pakura called out, and almost immediately Akatsuchi and C turned towards him and charged. Naruto watched them come towards him and felt their chakra and their movements from it. Akatsuchi ready to punch him from the top while C punched him from the bottom. When they connected, to everyone's surprise, Naruto had poofed out of existence. Kage Bushins. The shinobi all thought when they saw it, while Minato, who was watching closely, had his eyes widen a little. Naruto knows shadow clones? Wonder where he go, Akatsuchi said, putting his finger to his lips and scratching his head. C tried to dance him about, but before he could, a pair of arms shot out from the ground and brought him down into the ground. "Doton, Shinju Zanshu no Jutsu," Naruto whispered as C was pulled down until only his head was left sticking out. When he shot out of the ground, Akatsuchi eyed him and engaged him in taijutsu. As he swung, Naruto saw that his suspicions about him were right, in that Akatsuchi was focusing more on power and his speed was not so great. Meaning Naruto was easily dodging all the kicks and swings as well as landing a few blows of his own on Akatsuchi. He focuses on the side of where his kidney would be. He mentally thanked Shizen for the anatomy lessons. Akatsuchi grunted as Naruto pushed the big genin away while C had managed to dig himself out. He made a few hand signs and shouted Raitan, Dendu Underi. Small waves of lightning shot out from C and went towards Naruto. Naruto saw them and made his own hand seals. Doton, Tsuchi no Ye. The ground around him shot up and hoisted him into the air, dodging the waves of lightning. In doing so, Akatsuchi jumped back before he pumped chakra into his feet and pushed towards Naruto at great speed. Doton, Gorima no Te. Clumps of rocks formed around Akatsuchi's hands and increased its physical capabilities. He swung down at Naruto, who jumped away and landed on the side of one of the walls. The spot he was standing on was reduced to rubble from the IWA ninja. Naruto jumped down from the wall and landed back on the ground. C and Akatsuchi appeared in front of him. Both went forward and engaged him in taijutsu, doing their best to once again try and hit him. But again Naruto's speed was greater than both and was dodging them gracefully and almost effortlessly. Plus it did not help that Akatsuchi and C kept bumping into one another. "Stop getting in the way, IWA idiot. I trying, Mr. Kimo boy. You two don't make a very good pairing, you know that," Naruto said before he sent a strong kick to C, which threw him a couple of meters away, while Akatsuchi got kicked in the guy and then kneed in the face, which sent him staggering back. He had felt a crunch, so Naruto might have just broke Akatsuchi's giant nose. "Suetun, to put him," he said as glomps of water shot out and towards C and Akatsuchi. A few of the water shots hit the duo as the two knocked into each other and stumbled a little. In retaliation they threw kunai and shuriken towards Naruto. Instead of jumping out of the way, Naruto stood there calmly before he quickly pulled out the shusui and deflected them all with the black blade. When he did, many in the audience, civilian and shinobi alike, marveled at the blade. Those in Kage box looked at it curiously, even Minato. He had only seen the sword in its sheathed state, never actually taken out before. This was the first he and many other had seen a black blade. Many of the shinobis from other villages licked their lips and the thought of having the sword, but froze when they had Ki hit them and saw Tsunade glaring at those who she knew had those stealing thoughts. In Konoha, Kushina too looked at it with wide eyes. "Why have I never seen that blade before? Surely I would have noticed that sword at home, wouldn't I? Little unfair, isn't it, that you two team up?" Naruto spoke, getting the two out of their surprise, said as he was curious to why they teamed up. "It does not matter. You're the son of the Flash and most hate your very existence. Kyuumo hates your mother and IWA hates your father. Therefore both extremely hate you," C said. From their spots in the Kage box and back in Konoha, both Minato and Kushina frowned, while many of the Leaf shinobi shook theirs and argued they would not let anything happen to one of their shinobis. "Well, if that's the case, then I guess I should start getting serious then, huh?" he said, surprising most who were listening as he gripped the shusui, which was still sheathed. You know my Bachan has always said that I have the devil's luck since her completely sucks, he said, making Tsunade shake her fist at him from the crowd, making a few people laugh. So I think I can end this soon since watching you two fumble over each other leaves little to be desired, he said, as well as thinking I can end this in one move. Guess it's time that I finally used it. His fingers traced along the hilt of his resheathed blade. You think so? Well, I will show you, C declared, forgetting about the teamwork with Akatsuchi. In his hands 8 kunai appeared with paper bombs wrapped around them as he readied to throw them. Next to him Akatsuchi made hand signs before slamming on the ground. Doton, Gorimu no Jutsu. A big hand shot out of the ground in front of him and the rock body of a person 3 times the size of a normal person appeared and gave a loud roar. Impressive. Now it's my turn, he said before putting his hand on the hilt of Shusui and closing his eyes, much to the surprise of many. Naruto waited for the right moment as he felt the chirka of his opponents and felt one was angry and the other was weirdly curious and kinda happy even. He pushed Chakra to his feet, getting ready to push of and do so at a great speed. Here he goes, Hiruzen said, alerting the people around him and now watching intently at what would happen. I will show you, C declared as he threw the paper-bombed kunai towards Naruto, who still stood still. Akatsuchi also sent his golem forwards, which had its hand outstretched. Naruto waited and waited for the right moment as the attacks got closer and heard a few people tell him to get out of the way. Just as they got close, his eyes snapped open and at great speed pushed off from his spot. It all happened in a blur as Naruto was standing in one spot 1 second and then the next he was behind Akatsuchi and C. Many were surprised to see where Naruto suddenly stood with his sword outstretched. All they heard for that few seconds were what sounded like tearing the whipping of wind. They had no idea it was actually Naruto swinging his blade. Those Jonin level and above all saw him move and his actions and were looking at him in a surprised state, none realizing a Genin and potential Chunin could move so fast at his age. The kunai and missed their target and gone off at the other side of the field, not hurting anyone, while the golem and the contestants just stood there. Slowly Naruto began to put his blade away back in its sheath. The whole field was complete quiet as they heard him mutter his teknyu. Itoriu Ia, Shurshur Sun Sun. He then fully sheathed the blade, making the clink sound echo through the arena. When he did, everyone watched as the golem suddenly fell to pieces and C and Akatsuchi had blood spurt from their chests as they suddenly fell down to the ground. No one moved as they were all a little wide-eyed, while Hiruzen, Tsunade, Shizun, Mikoto, Itachi and Enko stood there with big smiles on their faces. Pakura, who was off to the side, shook herself out of her daze and smirked a little before raising her hand. The winner of the match is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. As soon as she said his name was, the Konoha side of the audience burst into applause as they stood up and cheered his name and clapped. That's my Naruchan, Tsunade shouted out as Shizun clapped enthusiastically. That's my student, Mikoto shouted out as she and her kids all cheered for him too. Back in Konoha, Mito, Eiji and Mina were all on their feet cheering loudly for their big brother, though Mina was more like just clapping rather loudly and kicking her legs in front of her. While everyone cheered, just 2 people did not clap. Not because they were not impressed, but because they were shocked at what they saw. Both Minato and Kushina looked at their son with one thought in their minds. Naruchan. How or when did you get so strong? Chapter 12. Chunin Finals Part 2. After the first round of the third task had finished, everyone was given 30 minutes to take a rest and gather their bearings before they moved on to the second round and on to their next fights. Mikoto, Tsunade, Hiruzen and Shizun had come down from their spots in the crowds and wanted to see how the trio were doing and to make sure they had no major injuries, despite already knowing they were all perfectly fine. The adults praised each one of them, especially Naruto, since his sword technique had apparently been the talk of the crowd since he used it. Watching him take down 2 shinobis and a big rock golem in a single move was something to be impressed with. That was a great first round, Naruto-kun. You are doing very well and you won it with revealing little of your strengths. Hiruzen said, greatly impressed with his surrogate grandson and student's performance. Well, deception is a ninja's main skill. Though I get the feeling the next fight with Kuratsuchi is going to a lot tougher. I'm going to have to bring out a few of my tougher cards and put them into play. Well, just know you have our full support. You will show that Iwa Kunoichi who is the boss around here. Tsunade said, pumping her fist in the air, making Naruto grin. Up in the Kage box, Minato wanted to go down and speak with Naruto since what he saw amazed him. He did not realize Naruto was so far along in his shinobi training. In fact, he made that match almost look too easy. Why am I only beginning to notice it now? What have I been doing not to notice how accomplished Naruto is becoming as a shinobi? He knew Mikoto would be a good fit for him as a sensei since Mikoto was a well-rounded shinobi that was a sort of jack of trades in each of the three main shinobi fields. He did ask Kakashi since Kakashi had become quite the famous shinobi and could be a good influence and good sensei, but Kakashi turned it down saying he did not have the time to play sensei. Once the Chunin exams are over, maybe I should test Naruto myself. Maybe he took more after me in terms of being a shinobi. Back in Konoha though, Kushina was thinking the same thing. She was a kenjutsu master and what she saw from Naruto with that attack was very impressive. What looked like a single strike was actually multiple strikes that had been struck at such a fast speed you had to watch carefully to even see it. She was currently standing outside of the Konoha Stadium bathrooms as she waited for the twins to finish making their business so they could go back and not miss any of the matches. Mina was huddled next to her holding on to her skirt looking around the room since it was a new place. I wonder who taught him and why did he not come to me for training in kenjutsu? Or did he ask me? Did he ask me and did I just brush him off? She thought since she was wondering to what sort of shinobi training she had actually provided her son. Once Naruto got back she too knew that she would have to talk with Naruto about where he got his skill set from. Back in the Suna Stadium the waiting bell signaled making everyone know that it was time for the second round to begin. Naruto, Itachi and Enko went back to the box where they already found Kuratsuchi waiting for them. She looked over at them when they came in as well and looked Naruto over before turning away. Why does she keep doing that? Enko asked since Kuratsuchi had kept glancing at Naruto and turning away quite a number of times. No idea. Maybe she is trying to figure me out. Strengths, weaknesses, what makes me tick, you know, that sort of thing. That could be it. She does strike me as more intelligent than her teammates and the others in the competition. You will have to watch her closely. She could be a wild card. Itachi muttered as Naruto nodded, thinking the same thing. As they entered the box, Pakura reappeared on the fields. The second round to the third part of the Chunin exams will begin now. Would Enko Mitsurashi and Itachi Uchiha of the Leaf Village please come down onto the field? The crowd cheered as the two genin names were announced and they all knew that for the earlier performances that this match was going to be a good one. Alright guys, you are up. Don't disappoint. Naruto said as Enko and Itachi walked onto the field side by side. Once they were in the center of the field, Itachi kept walking a small distance before he stopped and turned around to face Enko. In the stands, Mikoto took a deep breath. Though she knew deep down that Itachi would likely win between the two, she knew Enko was not going to give up easily and was going to give him a run for his money. On the field, the two teammates and friends looked at each other. Good luck, Enko-san. Itachi said as he smiled at her. Enko returned it. You too, Itachi. The next match is about to begin. Are you both ready? Pakura asked as both Itachi and Enko nodded and both readied in their respective stances. Pakura looked between them before swinging her arm down. Hajime. When the word was said, Itachi and Enko pushed back a little, both with their hands in their pouches and as quick as lightning began storming one another with shurikens. None made it past the collision center as the shurikens all found themselves getting rebounded of the other shurikis and were littering the ground as well as the wall. A few of the shinobis even had to duck their heads to avoid getting a shuriken stuck in their heads. On the field, after a minute of throwing shuriken at one another, they eventually stopped, but not before Enko put her hands on the ground with blood on the edges of her fingertips. Kuchios no Jutsu, she said as a puff of smoke appeared and a long snake appeared out of it. The snake saw Itachi and quickly slithered over to him and began to strike at him with quick and precise strike with its mouth as its fangs were bearing out as well as its tongue. Each time it struck, Itachi efficiently dodged its strikes and managed to land a few strikes onto the snake before he pushed himself away and jumped on the wall. The snake quickly followed after him and did its best to catch up to him, but Itachi had showed that he too had trained in his speed as he easily outmaneuvered the big snake. He then jumped in the air away from the wall and where the snake was and made hand signs. Katan Haikui no Jutsu, he said as black ash and fire poured out of his mouth and engulfed the snake, making it hiss in pain. That's going to hurt. Naruto muttered as many in the crowd thought the same thing. They would not want to be that snake right now. When the ash cloud disappeared, the snake was still there, but its skin was burnt in multiple places. I am going to be heading for Weaksis. The snake hissed out before it disappeared in a cloud of smoke. When Itachi landed on the ground, Enko came up behind him and pulled a kunai over his neck. You should remember to watch your back, she said as Itachi smiled at her. I could tell you the same thing. Anko's eyes winded when Itachi suddenly disappeared in a murder of crows and could hear something soaring through the air and coming towards her. She turned around in time to see kunai heading towards her. Her eyes counted how many there were and in retaliation threw the same amount of shuriken. Her shuriken collided with Itachi's and cancelled them out. As she did, Itachi appeared in front of her, jumped over her shoulder, but as he was in the air grabbed her shoulder. He then landed and using his strength threw her across the field with a lot of force. Anko couldn't dodge in time as she slammed into the walls of the stadium, wincing a little as she rubbed her lower back. I think I felt something crack. She thought as she shakily stood up, though her lower back felt like it was on fire. I have to tough this out now. She's hurt. Naruto whispered to himself as Tsunade and Shizun made the same decision. Anko made a few hand signs and Itachi, who had his Sharingan active, copied the movements. Katan, Enden no Jutsu. They both said as two giant fireballs blew out of their mouth and collided with one another, making a shockwave of heat hit the closer audience members. Fugaku meanwhile turned to his wife. That is an Uchiha clan jutsu. Why does someone who is not an Uchiha know it? He asked as Mikoto shrugged at her husband's question. Itachi must have shown her it. She does have a fire affinity, so it would be a helpful jutsu to know. Fugaku obviously was not satisfied with the answer but had to accept it since Mikoto had now turned back to the match at hand. Katan hai no jutsu sure aim. Anko said as she shot fire into the air, and everyone watched as the fire looked as if it began to break apart into multiple little pieces and rain down on the field. Itachi responded by calling out Doton Dohiki no Jutsu. As a wall of earth suddenly erected up in front of him and blocked the rain. Doton? Since when do you know Doton? Anko asked. I asked Naruto to show me a Doton that would be handy for defense, though in return I had to promise him that I would show him a Katan jutsu at some point in the future. No fair. She whined, pouting before she went into her pack and grabbed a few senbons. Itachi recognized them as the senbons she used in her previous match that had some kind of venom on them. Can't get hit by those. He thought as Anko made her way towards him with 3 senbons gripped in each of her hands. She got closer towards him and swung at him, but Itachi easily maneuvered out of the way. When she did though, Itachi swept her feet and went to hit her in the gut but noticed his legs went through her. An illusion. He thought to himself as he turned around to see a senbon implanted in his shoulder. Sometimes you have to go back to basics, right? Anko said as Itachi chuckled. Very true, and it seems your poison managed to get me. I am guessing my arm will be out of commission for a little while? He asked as she nodded. Then I guess I better get rid of it before it spread too far. He said. As he said that, he grabbed a kunai with his other hand and drove it into the wound where the senbon went in, effectively getting the poison out of his system. Many in the audience were surprised to see him do such an act, but the shinobi saw it as dedication since not many would willingly injure themselves in order to get rid of the poison. That should be enough, he said before he quickly hit Anko in her stomach as she looked at him in surprise at what he had just done. Anko hit the ground but quickly got up. Sanaijishu, she said as 2 snakes shot out of her sleeve and headed straight towards Itachi. To her surprise they hit, but a moment later a poof was heard and a log was now in his place. You're not the only one who can go back to basics, he said as Anko turned around to try and stop him but instead felt a thud hit the back of neck. Her eyes went dreary and her vision went black before she collapsed to the ground knocked out. Itachi looked towards Pakura, who nodded. The winner of the match is Itachi Uchiha of Konoha. The crowd cheered and clapped at the 2 genin who gave them another good performance as Itachi's siblings once again cheered loudly for their big brother. Itachi looked down at Anko and quickly picked her and carried her over to the medic bay where they would take a quickly look over her and check her vitals were all fine. You did good, Anko-san. You pushed me quite a bit. I look forward to any future battles we should have, he said as he patted his friend's shoulders before he made his way back the contestants' box. In the stands, Mikoto gave both her son and her female student a loud round of applause, knowing that they both deserved it and that she was very proud of both of them. Good fight. Anko put you through the ringer, he said as Itachi winced a little from the cut on his shoulder. Yes, well, as tough as that was, it is now your turn to fight against some feminine fury, he said as they looked over to see Kuratsuchi move on to the field. Looks like it is my turn again, Naruto said as he cracked his shoulders and followed after. When they both walked onto the field, the Konoha and the IWA side all erupted into cheers, no doubt having been waiting to see this match happen for some time. It was essentially the family of IWA versus the family of Konoha, and it was time to see which one was better. Naruto and Kuratsuchi stood apart from one another as the two looked across from one another. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her calm demeanor and noticed she was not listening to the shouting of the crowds. "You're different from the rest," he said as Kuratsuchi raised an eyebrow. "Different how? For starters, you are not insulting me because of who I'm related to. I know my dad can be an ass at times, but you don't need to take it out on me," he said as many in the crowd snickered at his words. In the Hokage box, Minato coughed and looked a little uncomfortable as the other Kages laughed in their seats, no doubt finding it funny that the man's son called him what they all thought he was. "Not that it's any of your business, but I don't hold that petty grudge that others in IWA carry. While I don't really like you all the same, I don't hold a grudge over what happened in the Third War. It was war and casualties and deaths were bound to happen. Even though I agree, your dad can be an ass." Now Minato just wanted to crawl away as the Kages laughed even harder, as did Tsunade, Shizune and others in their section. "What about those times where you just looked at me like you hated me? Just observing you, wanting to see what your strengths were, any weak points, what made you tick? And did you get any answers?" he asked as Kuratsuchi smirked at him. "Well, I guess you will just have to find out," she said, making Naruto back in return. "Okay, love birds, if you two are done flirting with each other," Pakura said as Naruto and Kuratsuchi blushed a little and looked the other way, drawing a few laughs from everyone. "Then we can begin this match." They both nodded and got in their respective stances. "Hajime, Doton, Daichi no Seppuku," Kuratsuchi called as a massive spike of earth shot out of the ground towards Naruto. Naruto jumped back 10 meters and missed the spike as he unsheathed the shusui. Kuratsuchi went forward with a kunai in each hand and began swiping at Naruto, who easily defended with the shusui. Sparks flew from the kunai and blade when they connected with one another. Kuratsuchi used her slim body and used her flexibility to perform a couple of very agile and well-balanced moves as she tried to hit him in some of his vital spots. One of her kunais went for the jugular, showing Naruto just how serious she was being. He moved his head back and just felt the graze of the tip of the kunai hit his throat. In response, he swept her legs with a vicious kick, but Kuratsuchi quickly jumped in the air before she unleashed a kick of her own. He caught the kick and threw her over his shoulder, but she easily rolled with the throw. "Doton Doro no Gazo," she said as glomps on mud shot out of her mouth and rocketing towards Naruto. "Futon de Tapa," he said as he took a deep breath and forced a large swirl of wind out of his mouth. The wind rushed forward and knocked into the mud shots, sweeping them away or destroying the others. "Futon, Doton and Suiton Jutsu," Kushina thought as she watched the screen of her son fighting the IWA Kunoichi. "How does he have 3 elements? He should have taken after either myself or Minato, yet he has inherited both along with another." Back on the field, Naruto defended from a few quick strikes from Kuratsuchi, though he was too fast and managed to block each strike and counter with his own, though she would block and do the same. Eventually her kunai and Naruto's sword locked onto each other and began fighting for dominance. When they entered a stalemate, Naruto used his superior physical strength and pushed her back and sent her flying back a couple of meters. "So he is not all show. He has physical strength too," she thought. Kuratsuchi easily backflipped and landed on her feet. "Kagebushin no Jutsu," Naruto called as 3 shadow clones shot forward and began attacking Kuratsuchi as Naruto placed a hand on his blade's hilt. "He's going for it again," Hiruzen said as Tsuanda nodded. It's early for him to be going for it again. When he watched the clones get her in the right spot, charged. "Itoryu, Shurshur Sun," he said as he suddenly shot forward and went to slash Kuratsuchi again. However, when Kuratsuchi saw what he was doing and noticed him ready to charge, she already knew the general dynamics of the attack. She ran forward towards one of the Naruto clones and jumped onto its shoulder before pushing herself into the air. In the air, she successfully dodged the attack as Naruto went past, having missed his target. Up in the Kage box, Inoki grinned at his granddaughter's display. "She dodged it," Naruto said, surprised before he saw Kuratsuchi performing hand seals again. "That trick won't work with me. You need the opponent to be staying in a spot to let it hit. It's a direct hit move, so if they're moving then you won't be able to hit them," she said as Naruto grinned. "You are not like the rest. You're a real kunoichi, give me the best you got," Naruto said. Kuratsuchi smirked in response. "The only real competition I get back home that is in our age range is against Enko and Itachi. Well, I should impress since I have a reputation to uphold. I have IWA blood running through me and I aim to make my family proud. Is that not what you are doing?" Something like that, though mine is only to certain members of my family. There are a few that I am showing them what they missed out on, what they did not help. He said bitterly as he glanced up at his father, who sat there watching the battle with calculating eyes. They stared towards each before they both began to make a set of hand seals, both at similar speeds and similar actions and motions. Katan Hai Bareto no Jutsu. Naruto reciprocated with his own Suiton Mizu Bareto no Jutsu. Water and fireballs rushed towards their targets at great speed but collided with one another, creating a small veil of steam to begin to appear and engulf the lower field, making it a little difficult for some to see what was happening. Neither stopped their attack as fire and water rained down through the field, trying to bypass the other but neither having any success. She really is pretty good, Naruto thought. It's to be expected that the son of the Yellow Flash would be this skilled. Kuratsuchi thought in return. Deciding to take it up a notch, Kuratsuchi smiled to herself before she jumped onto the high walls, looking down at Naruto, who stared up at her as did the others in the crowds and who was watching. She made a few head seals before shout Yotan Yogan no aim. She called out as she took a deep breath and shot out large glomps of lava from her mouth high into the air and watched as it began to separate from large glomps and into small and smaller pieces until it was just like bits of hail. One bit fell onto Naruto's shirt sleeve and quickly burnt a hole into it. Naruto quickly ripped the sleeve off and threw it aside, not wanting to get those kind of burns touch his skin. She knows Yotan? I did not even know IWA had any shinobi who could use that bloodline. Shizen asked as Tswanda and Hiruzen narrowed her eyes, as did Mikoto from her seat. There was a clan that specialized and could use the Yotan bloodline long ago, but they got split and separated throughout the year and got spread throughout the years, similar to that of the Uzumaki. My guess is that someone from that girl's family carried the Yotan bloodline and it was passed down to her. On the field, Naruto looked at her surprise. Yotan, huh? This takes things to a new level. I have to be more careful around her and I can't let that lava touch me, of it will be lights out for me. He thought. You look a little out of it. I hope that little treat I just gave you did not burn you too badly, she said as she grinned at him as he looked up at her. Not at all, though I was a little surprised. This does not change the fact I will still kick your ass, he said, making her glare down at him. We will see who will be the one to get their ass kicked, she said as she went through another lot of hand seals. Yotan Yogan Kiryu no Jutsu. This time a large stream of lava shot out from her mouth and rushed towards him. Naruto quickly saw the danger and immediately jumped as far away as he could from harm's way. However, he noticed that when the lava hit the ground, it began to spread across the floor and slowly begin to cover the ground. Lava is basically molten rock that had been superheated up and had taken a kind of middle ground between liquid and solid. Kept hot it stays as a liquid, but when super cooled it will harden and become rock, he thought before a thought came to his mind. Which means water should be effective against it, he muttered to himself as he went through hand seals and channeled his chakra. Suiton Mizurappa, he said as a strong jet of water shot forward and covered over the lava and quickly showed to have already stopped it from moving forward. The jet of water was stationed just a bit into the air so the water could evenly spread over the lava and harden it. After a few moments the jet of water stopped as steam was emitted from the lava and showed the lava had rapidly cooled down to form a layer of rock on top of the surface of the field. Doton Daichi no Supeiku Seiki, Kuratsuchi called as Naruto saw that the earth layer that had been created from the lava getting cooled down suddenly shot up. The great thing about lava is once it has cooled down it just turns to earth, enabling me to use my arsenal of earth jutsus, Kuratsuchi called as Naruto dodged each of the spikes, though at the end the last one managed to leave a slash across his left shoulder, making him wince a little and making those watching from IWA cheer. Naruto jumped back away from the earth as much as he could before he gripped his right fists tightly. He looked up towards Tsunade, who looked back at him before she gave him a nod. Now the tables are about to be turned, Naruto said as Kuratsuchi listened to his words and narrowed her eyes. Since you seem to like the flat earth so much, let's rumble it around a little, before he threw his hand up and struck a similar pose to Tsunade's chakra pumped into his fist. When those from Konoha saw that stance, many paled while Minato and Kushina's eyes went as wide as saucers. She didn't teach him that move surely, Jiraiya thought as he watched what Naruto was about to do. In the stadium everyone waited with bated breaths before Naruto swung his chakra-enhanced fist down onto the ground. Hyuah! He cried out as his fist impacted the ground. As soon as it hit, the earth beneath him shook uncontrollably and giant cracks began to form all over the field. Kuratsuchi looked around in a panic as she saw the cracks were forming around where she was standing. She began to wobble on her spot as the ground suddenly began bursting all around her and huge pieces of earth began shooting out of the ground as the field began tearing itself apart. This is not good, she thought as she jumped back and tried to stick to one of the walls, but when she did she saw Naruto appeared in front of her in a great burst of speed. I'm ending this, Naruto thought to himself before he used a chakra-enhanced kick to her stomach, making her lose her breath and get the wind knocked out of her and sent her into the air. He then appeared above her in great speed again and threw her to the ground before appearing on the ground just as she was about to meet the ground. He then raised his right leg as high as he could, and just as she went past him towards the ground he swung his right leg into her back and smashed her into the ground, making a small crater form from underneath her. Tsuten Kyaku, he said as he did the move before it was over. He looked down towards Kuratsuchi and saw that she was still conscious but was pretty battered and would not be getting up anytime soon. He sighed and swept a hand through his hair and dropped down next to her on his butt. Though his control with the super strength was good, it was still not quite enough to not leave him a little fatigued. You beat me, she said sadly as she tried to raise her head but couldn't. I guess I did, though if it helps you gave me one hell of a fight. You did not make it easy, he said as she nodded. I guess that's okay then, she said as Naruto looked over towards Pakura, who nodded and gave the signal. The winner of the match is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. Once she did, many in the audience cheered while the audience members from IWA groaned a little and looked away, not happy their shinobi lost to him. His siblings in Konoha cheered loudly again as little Mina stood up on her mother lap and cheered with her arms in the air, smiling and giggling happily. Kushina clapped but was out of words to say from her eldest son's performance. Kuratsuchi lay on the ground. She knew her grandfather would no doubt give her a telling off for losing, which made her groan. How was I supposed to know how good he was? She thought before she felt a relaxing feeling spread through her back that felt nice and cool. She looked over to see Naruto with his hand on her back with his hands glowing green. What are you doing? She asked, furrowing her brow at him. What does it look like I am doing? I'm healing you, of course, he said, surprising her. Why not? He said, shrugging. It won't tire me out if that is what you were thinking. I have a lot of chakra. More than both my parents put together when they were my age. Kuratsuchi did not say anything but after a few minutes felt the pain lessen before the medics took over and put her on a gurney. As they took her back she looked over to see Naruto walking back to the fighter box. When she did their two eyes met and for just a moment they both thought about how pretty the other's eyes were. Naruto walked back to the box to find Itachi standing there looking towards him. I guess it's just us left now. Are you going to give me your best, Naruto? Itachi asked as he leaned against the wall. Naruto grinned. As long as you give me your best, then I will give you mine. Then we are in agreement. As the two stood there catching their breath and letting themselves get small rests before they go out onto the field. Kage box. So it's another Konoha-filled finals. There is a surprise, said as he leaned back and put his head in his hand as he lounged lazily. Yes, though my granddaughter put up a good fight, I guess it just was not enough. We will have to up her training, he said to the big man next to him, who nodded silently as he looked down towards the field. The Kazekage turned to Minato. I did not know Tsunade had taken on an apprentice, let alone taught someone the secret to her super strength. You look just as surprised as everyone else did. I take it you did not know? Inwardly Minato was more surprised at what his son had managed to do and knew that once they were back in Konoha he needed to speak with Naruto and Tsunade. Outwardly though he was playing it cool. I guess my son has the art of deception down since he surprised all of us, he said as the Kazekage nodded while Minato looked back at Kakashi, who was no doubt surprised as well. Konoha. Kushina, you never told us Naruto was so developed in his shinobi skills. By his performance I would say he should have been made Chunin long ago, Yoshino said as her son Shikamaru slept just in the seat beside her. The other mothers had all said the same thing. None had known that Naruto was at his current level. He even surprised them when he healed Kuratsuchi, since everyone else would have just walked and left here there. Kushina stared but never continued. She did not know what to say as his eyes were just fixed on the screen where her son was. Her children were all sitting by her feet now, with Mina sitting on Mito as the sisters played together while Eiji was with little Kiba in Izuka. Naru-chan, she whispered as her bottom lip trembled. Stadium. Mikoto waited with bated breath as she waited for her son and her student to walk out on the field, not entirely sure who she wanted to win. She did not want to play favorites, yet her mother's side of her wanted her boy to win it, even though she did not mind which of the two won in the end. Fugaku meanwhile sat with a stoic expression along with many of the other members of the Uchiha clan. She did not need to guess who he wanted to win. He had told Itachi before they left for Suna that he was to win at all costs, so that he could show everyone why the Uchiha clan was to be respected and feared. Itachi had said nothing and had just nodded. Tsunade, Hiruzen and Shizen meanwhile sat little nervously, knowing this would be the fight Naruto would have most trouble with. Fighting against a Sharingan was difficult on many levels, and one had to try and not look them in the eye. If they did, then it was all over. They had taught him all he knew, and now it was time for him to put it to the real test. Everyone chatted silently as Pakura looked up to the Kage box and saw the nod from the Kazekage indicating the 10-minute break was over. The final match of the Chunin exams are about to begin. Would Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze and Itachi Uchiha come onto the field? She said as cheers immediately began to sound out through the stadium. Both boys walked onto the field and stood in the center before they turned to face one another. Naruto and Itachi looked at one another from across the field, both with serious and focused looks plastered on their faces. "Good luck, Uchiha," Naruto said, grinning at him as Itachi did the same. "And to you, Uzumaki." Pakura stood beside the two boys and saw they were both ready and just waiting for her signal. She took a deep breath, put her right arm in the air and then swung down. "Hajime," Pakura called out as the match began, though many were surprised when neither of the boys moved an inch. "Mama, why they not moving?" Ria asked from Mikoto's lap as she pouted that nothing was happening in front of her. "Neither one are moving. They're waiting for the others to make one tiny slip up so they can take advantage of it," Shizen said as Tsuwanda and Hiruzen nodded with a similar thought. All the Kages sat in the box waiting for one of them to make a move, being very patient and knowing what they were doing. The bodyguards were all doing the same. Then after a few minutes they finally moved. Both boys had a finger flinch at the same time, and the other now tried to use that as an invite to attack. Both Naruto and Itachi threw a kunai at one another, which only met in the middle and made a loud clang sound out through the arena. The two boys pushed off from the ground and went forward and met each other in the middle as they began a taijutsu battle. Itachi went for an uppercut, which Naruto managed to dodge by stepping back before Itachi then tried to sweep the legs. Naruto jumped it and then shot his right leg towards Itachi's head, which Itachi managed to block with his left elbow. He then went forward and grabbed Naruto's shoulder and, like earlier with Enko, flipped over him in an attempt to throw him. Naruto, however, when he was thrown, somersaulted through the air and made a Kagebushin behind him, which threw him back forward and shoulder barged Itachi, which made the Uchiha take a few steps back. Itachi narrowed his eyes and his Sharingan appeared. When they did, Naruto immediately averted his eyes and began looking anywhere else but his eyes. "Your Sharingan doesn't to scare me, Itachi. As long as I don't look you in the eye, then you can't put a genjutsu on me," Naruto said. "But you will have to look up eventually, Naruto. It's only a matter of time," Itachi said as Naruto took the handle of the shusui out. "Itoryu, Sanjiroku pound ho," Naruto said as he struck the air with great force, and a massive swipe of dense wind shot forward at great speed towards Itachi. Itachi, however, saw it coming and with his Sharingan activated managed to dodge out of the way in time as he watched the attack go past him and strike the wall from behind him. When it struck, the giant wall split in half with a very deep slash now embedding in the concrete. Itachi did not let Naruto have another chance to attack him. "Katon, Gakakyu no Jutsu," he called as fire shot forward and towards Naruto. In retaliation, Naruto gripped Shusui and swung it with great force as he sent another great slash like he had just used towards the fireball. When they met, a small explosion went off which got a plume of smoke to from. Naruto looked around the field as the smoke from the blast obscured his view. Though he did not have to search long, as he then looked up to see Itachi in the air with kunais with paper bombs attached to them in each hand and then threw them towards him. Seeing the kunais coming towards him, Naruto made hand signs. "Suetun Mizu Bareto no Jutsu," he said as glomps of water shot out of his mouth and began taking out the kunai. He hit 9 of the 10 kunais, but one that was hiding behind the shadow of another kunai managed to get past and landed beside Naruto. He saw it and saw the paper bomb light up before it suddenly exploded beside him. "Naruchan!" Shizen and Tsunade called out while some of the Uchihas along with Fugaku grinned at the event. Itachi landed on the ground just a few feet from where Naruto was standing. Ad looked at the post where his friend and rival had previously been standing. "Where did you go, Naruto?" he thought as he saw empty spot where he had been standing. "Front, left, right, up, behind. That only leaves He started as he looked down to the ground beneath him. Just as he did, the ground began to crack and shake, making Itachi's eyes widen slightly, and jumped back as quickly as he could. A tan chakra-enforced fist shot out of the ground and missed Itachi by an inch and sailed past him. Even though that missed, Naruto brought up his left leg and kicked Itachi in the stomach, making the boy keel over slightly and before getting pushed back and skid along the ground, though managing to still stand. Itachi, though in slightly pain, did not allow any more time to be lost. "Katon, suisei no hai," he said as thick glomps of fire shot into the air, covering a small portion of the arena as small comet-shaped fireballs began raining down towards Naruto. "An interesting move, I don't think I have seen that one before," Hiruzen said as he examined the jutsu. Some of the other fire users in the arena watching were thinking the same thing. On the field, Naruto saw the small fire comets coming towards him. Suiton, Suijinhiki. He called as shot water out of his mouth and built up a wall in front of him that went about 10 meters high into the air. The fire comets went through the water wall and immediately called off and either disappeared into nothing or began little steam balls that Naruto easily swiped away with Shusui. Naruto then pushed himself off the ground and towards Itachi and swung Shusui at him. Itachi, though, saw the move coming and whipped out a kunai in each hand and blocked the blade, and the two then began trading swipes of metal. Sparks flew all around them quickly and bright as the two traded blows. Naruto swung his Shusui at Itachi, trying to hit parts of the body that were vital in order to bring him down quicker and try to end the match sooner. However, Itachi's Sharingan was preventing it as it kept locked on him and his movements, and managed to read what move he would do next and either dodged or blocked the strikes. In the crowd, many were cheering as they watched the display between Naruto and Itachi, and most of the civilians were on the edge of their seats. It won't last much longer. The blonde Namikaze brat does not stand a chance against the Sharingan. His attempts are futile, Fugaku said as some of the Uchiha agreed with him while Mikoto scowled at her husband's words. This match is very close. Both boys are fighting on even grounds. Hiruzen added. Yes, but if Naruto actually used that skill set he knows, then it would have been over a lot quicker. Tsunade said, quietly motioning about Naruto's Mokuton as Hiruzen nodded. However, they both knew why Naruto wouldn't use that skill set till he was much older. On the field, Naruto was internally getting a little frustrated that he was not landing many of his strikes on Itachi as the Uchiha kept blocking them. He has increased his speed a lot. I need to find some way to slow him down, Naruto thought before an idea popped into his head that made him internally smile. Itachi watched as Naruto swung his blade again towards him and his Sharingan easily followed the movements. His Sharingan was so focused on the sword that it did not catch. Naruto put his hand into one of his pouches and bring out a brush. When Itachi blocked the strike with his kunai, Naruto smirked and put his brush forward and swiped it across Itachi's hand, quickly and skillfully drawing a seal on the back of his hand. Itachi felt the brush touch his skin and his eye widened a little when he saw the black seal on his hand. He jumped back a little and saw the seal on his hand, and with his knowledge of seals to a degree, he recognized it was a weight seal. Should have kept your eye on the other hand, Itachi, Naruto said as he made a hand movement. Fuin. Minato and Kushina's eyes widened in surprise as they both thought the same thing. I didn't think that he would be that skilled in Fuin Jutsu. We need to figure out how he got so strong. I can't even remember teaching him any of what he is using. As soon as he did that, Itachi's left hand dropped to the ground like a heavy weight and went down to one knee. He tried to stand up, but there was just too much weight pressing down on his hand. He sighed and looked towards Naruto. That was a good move, Naruto, but you forgot one thing. Naruto raised an eyebrow. You looked in my eyes, he said as everything around Naruto suddenly began to distort and the sky became a light purple and he saw everyone in the stands disappear. Itachi, who was in front of him, was now gone. When did I look in his eyes? He thought as he went over what happened and realized it must have been when he added the seal to Itachi's hand. His eyes must have caught mine when I was adding the seal. I have to get out of this and quick as I can, he thought as he began cutting off his chakra through his body. I need to release a large burst of chakra in order to release the genjutsu. So that is what he did as he began storing up chakra from his body and to be ready to release a large burst of it and be released. He had plenty of chakra left, but after the long day he could feel his body and his muscles aching as the day began to take its toll on him. You're a failure, a voice suddenly said from next to him as he turned beside him to see his dad standing there scowling at him. You're a failure of a shinobi. We didn't bother teaching you because I know you are not worth the effort. You could never be the child I always wanted to raise. Naruto widened his eyes a little at that, but he looked forward. This is not real. It's just an illusion. he said as he suddenly felt some kind of strike hit his face. He looked forward to see Kushina now standing in front of him with her palm outstretched. I pushed you away because I did not want you anymore. Why would want you when I have 3 perfect little children that I can love and spoil? I never wanted you to begin with. She said as she glared at him. This is not real. He continued to say to himself as he stored up more chakra to release. From behind him he then felt a strikes hit him and saw senbons sticking out of him. It was Shizun, Zwanda and Hiruzen all standing there with Shizun's hand stretched showing she had thrown the senbons. Why did we train you? You're just a waste of our time. They said together. Then from all around him other people began to appear. Mikoto, Anko, Mina, Mito, Eiji, Kakashi, and Jiraiya all stood there glaring towards him, all circling around him, all saying the same thing. This is not real, this is not real. He kept saying to himself, not noticing that while he focused on what they were saying, he was storing more chakra than necessary. The people around him got closer and got louder as all he could hear were their words, and he shook his head furiously. Shut up! He shouted as he unleashed the chakra he had stored up and that shot out from all around him. The illusion around him flickered before it faded away and the crowds and Itachi came back into view. His chakra continued to burst around and caused large cracks to form in the ground as well as rubble to get swept away from how powerful it was. Many in the audience were left speechless, his father included, at how much chakra he had and how powerful it was. What did he do? Tsunade asked, scowling a little, and looked at Naruto in worry as she watched him drop to one knee and panted. No doubt the large amount of chakra he unleashed sapped him of his energy and chakra. Naruto has that much chakra. Minato thought, leaning forward in his seat. That almost double the amount Kushina had when she was that age. Just how much chakra does Naruto have? Naruto panted and looked at Itachi, who had finally broke the weight seal on his hand, but looked as ragged and exhausted as he did. The days have been long and hard on both of them. I'm kicking your ass big time for that genjutsu, he said as Itachi looked at him a little sorry. I don't have much chakra left, and by the looks of thing neither do you. So how about we finish this with one last move? Winner take all? Itachi offered. One move? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow as his mouth flickered in a tin grin. I'm game. Perfect way to get you back for that illusion, he said as they took a few steps further away from one another. Everyone in the stadium watched as Itachi did a few hand signs and then stuck hand in front of him. His chakra appeared in his left hand before the chakra suddenly set on fire. He then put it to the side and the fire then spread around his hand and up just past his wrist. The shape of the fire went to a spear shape. Many again looked at it in fascination, Uchihas included. Not even Mikoto had seen her son use that move before, and he had not used that move before in one of their sparring and training sessions. Kakashi, who was behind Minato, looked at it in surprise. It's like my Raikiri, only instead of lightning, it's fire. He is recognized as a genius. It should not be that surprising that he made his own version, Minato said as Kakashi nodded while the other Kage all looked in fascination. Wow, that's pretty cool, Naruto said as Itachi readied to shoot forward. But now it's time for my move. One I am sure many will recognize. Naruto then stood up and put his right hand out with his palm facing upwards. It was then that Konoha Shinobi heard the familiar swirling sound that made Minato, Tsunade, Kakashi, Shizun, Hiruzen and others widen their eyes to epic proportions when they realized what he was doing. In Naruto's hand, chakra began to swirl around in his hand before it began to form and take the shape of a sphere. It made a swirling sound and it pulsed in his hands. Itachi looked a little surprised before he went back to have an emotionless look on his face. How does Naruto know the Rasengan? Minato asked, standing up from his seat. I'm not sure. But I had to guess. It seems Naruto has been going through your things. It the best explanation to him knowing that jutsu, Kakashi added. Back in Konoha, Kushina and the other mothers had looks that resembled gaping fish, not really believing that what they were seeing was real. Kushina, Minato taught him the Rasengan. Was that really that wise? Some said as Hana stared to her friend in awe. He didn't. I know Minato didn't. We have spoken about not teaching anyone the Rasengan until we felt it was time. We did not even want to teach the twins the Rasengan until they were at least 12, maybe 13. She said as they all looked at her. Then Kushina realized something. We had never even intended to teach it to Naruto. We weren't going to teach him his birthright. Is this what Tsunade meant that day we told her to teach the twins medical ninjutsu? Well, I guess Naruto did not get that memo. Hitomi Hyuga said as by her feet, Mina, Eiji and Mito watched their big brother in fascination and the blue orb in his hands. Back on the field, Naruto and Itachi positioned themselves readily and eyed each other. Itachi had his Sharingan activated while Naruto's eyes seemed to glow with power radiating from it. Then they both pushed forward and ran towards each other at great speed. Itachi had his let brought back behind him as did Naruto with the Rasengan. Those in the audience were completely silent as the two moved opposed each other and suddenly got thrown forward and towards one another. The only sound through the arena was the sound of the attacks. Kajian, Rasengan. Both attacks met head-on and the sound of the clash resonated through the arena as they collided. The wind around the two boys picked up before a strong shockwave erupted from around the two boys as the two attacks fought for dominance. The ground beneath them cracked away along with the area around them. The entire arena was hit by a strong shockwave and wind that many put their hands in front of their faces. This is insane. Who knew kids like this could have this kind of power? A Kyuubi shinobi said as he tried to stop the wind lashing at his face. The two attacks continued to fight for dominance as neither Naruto nor Itachi let up before they both let out a loud shout and the attacks and the area around them completely exploded and went up in smoke. The explosion knocked many of their seats and others had to use chakra to stay in their seat. Naruto. Itachi. Back in Konoha, Kushina was on her feet as she held her hand to her mouth after seeing her eldest get enveloped by the smoke and dust. Mito, Eiji and Mina look a little confused but had sad looks on their faces and Mina looked ready to cry. Mikoto was in a similar situation as she wanted to jump into the stadium and check her son and student were still alive. Sasuke looked down worriedly as did Ria, who like Mina looked ready to cry. Fugaku though looked as stoic as ever. Tsunade and Shizun looked ready to jump down but Hiruzen planted his hand on their shoulder muttering that Naruto was okay. In the box all the Kage looked a little wide-eyed at the final attack and Minato looked concerned towards his son who he still could not see. Slowly though the cloud of smoke disappeared, revealing that the entire arena was completely and utterly wrecked and the walls looked like they were barely standing. Eventually the figure of Naruto and Itachi appeared and showed them both standing shoulder to shoulder while both were looking and facing opposite directions. Both looked ready to drop and their clothes were in tatters. They had cuts all over their bodies and bruises forming. Naruto's left hand looked very burnt while Itachi looked a little mangled, indicating some broken bones. Everyone sat on the edge of their seats as they waited for the two boys to move or to even speak. Itachi and Naruto turned their heads towards each other and both gave off a small smile before Itachi spoke. "I guess you got me," he said as his eyes rolled into the back of his head and fell to his knees and went unconscious. Many gasped at that while Naruto looked at Pakura, who reappeared on the field and looked a little shocked from the fight she had seen. She lifted her arm in the air. The winner of the match and winner of the Chunin exams is Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze. As soon as she did, most in the stadium got on their feet and clapped wildly at the amazing battle they had just seen. Most clapped while some for Kyuubi and Iwa scowled a little and just looked away. Naruto smiled at the crowd and saw his father look at him in disbelief, no doubt not believing his son just won the exams. With the match over, Naruto breathed out a heavy breath before he fell backwards, the exhaustion of the day now taking its toll on him. Uzumaki or not, he had his limits. When he did, Tsunade, Shizun, Hiruzen and Mikoto left their seats and jumped into the stadium. Mikoto went straight to her son with Shizun coming up behind her to check him over while Tsunade and Hiruzen checked on Naruto. "Let's get them both to the med bay, they will need some serious resting after today," Tsunade said as she picked up Naruto up gently on her back with Mikoto doing the same for Itachi before they quickly left the stadium. Shizun hurried with them while Hiruzen picked up Naruto's blade in his hands and followed after them. That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.